The Academy Beyond Stars. The twin suns of Ethera bathed the campus of the Etheric Unity Academy in a golden glow, casting long shadows beneath silver trees that hummed with energy. The Academy, carved from living crystal and grown with harmonic architecture, pulsed like a heart of thought and purpose in the center of the Zerati civilization. Inside Lecture Hall 7, the air shimmered with anticipation as Cadet Veli adjusted his tunic, the fabric soft and iridescent against his skin. Around him, dozens of his peers floated slightly above the obsidian floor in silent meditation, waiting for the day's historical immersion to begin. Veli's heart beat faster than it should. History wasn't his strongest subject. He preferred dream mapping and starfold theory. But today was different. Today, they would witness the primitive archive, a collection of cultural memories from underdeveloped species. And among them, the humans. They call themselves Homo sapiens. Instructor Kalen began, his voice resonating through their minds. A self-named species from Sol 3, third planet of a minor yellow star. Their civilization rose and fell multiple times, and they remain planet-bound. What makes them remarkable is their contradiction. With a slow wave of Kalen's hand, the lights dimmed and the room was enveloped in starlight. The dome above them became a window into another world, lush, blue, chaotic, Earth. The first images were quiet. Children playing in fields, lovers on rain-soaked streets, a grandmother lighting candles in a crumbling apartment. But then the tone shifted. A battlefield unfolded before them. Explosions split the air. Bodies fell in mud. A young soldier screamed over the lifeless form of his brother. Tanks rolled across broken cities. Bombs fell. Screams. Silence. Then more fire. The footage wasn't curated, not filtered through the Concord's usual empathy translation fields. It was raw, as it had happened, and the cadets had never seen anything like it. Veli flinched as a building crumbled onto screaming civilians. Ran, usually unshakable, gripped the edge of his lev platform until his knuckles paled to lavender. Tora whispered a protective mantra under her breath, as though trying to shield her mind from the images. And yet, none of them looked away. "I don't understand," Veli finally said, his voice dry and tight. "Why would they do this to each other?" Kalen nodded solemnly. "That is the central question. Humanity is capable of immense love, creativity, sacrifice, and yet they wage war like no species we've recorded." Another clip began, this time in color, more modern. Soldiers hugging after rescue missions. Civilians forming human shields to protect strangers. A child sharing bread in a bombed-out street. "It's not just violence," Taurus said, voice trembling. "It's passion. They feel so much." Kalen's expression was unreadable. Some Concord scholars believe their capacity for destruction is matched only by their capacity for beauty. Their music, their stories, their resistance in the face of despair. It transcends even our empathic understanding. The final segment played. A battlefield again, but different. A young human stood alone, unarmed, in front of a column of tanks. He did not move. The tank stopped. A hush fell over the room. Even the crystals of the academy quieted, as if listening. "Why are we only seeing this now?" Rand asked. "Why wasn't this in our normal study paths?" "Because," Kalen said, "it is dangerous. Understanding humans too deeply has consequences." "What kind of consequences?" Veli asked, not blinking. "Empathy," Kalen said simply. "Too much empathy can change who you are." The room was silent. Veli stared at the fading images still lingering in the air like ghosts. He felt something shift inside him, an ache or maybe a hunger. He couldn't name it, but it felt ancient and familiar. Humans, so broken, so brilliant. And somehow, in their rage and ruin, there was a strange kind of poetry. As the session ended, most cadets drifted away in stunned silence. But Veli lingered. He stepped closer to the archive interface and gently pressed his fingers to the memory field, watching a human mother shield her child with her body during a bombing raid. "They should have been extinct," he whispered. "And yet they endure." A voice spoke softly behind him. It was Ran. Maybe the question isn't how they survived. Maybe it's why watching them makes us feel something we've never felt before. Veli turned, eyes wide. Something had begun, quiet as a heartbeat, dangerous as a memory, and it would not be easily undone. The forbidden thread. Veli couldn't sleep. Even as the tranquil harmonics of the academy pulsed gently through the walls of his dormitory chamber, his thoughts burned like wildfire. Every time he closed his eyes, the human faces returned, faces twisted in rage, joy, grief, and love. Not even the meditative dream bath could quiet them. He wasn't alone. In the garden atrium beneath the moonflowers, he found Rand staring into the starlit fountain, his usual grin replaced by something harder, sharper. "You feel it too," Veli said softly. Rand didn't look away. I watched the footage again. I broke protocol. Veli didn't need to ask how. Rand had always been gifted with bypassing security. Curiosity was in his blood. "There's more, Veli. So much more. The surface feeds we were shown, they were filtered, sanitized. I thought that was the raw footage." "No," Rand said, turning toward him now, eyes gleaming in the dark. "There's a level beneath that. The deep stream archives. The one sealed under the covenant of cognitive safety." Veli's pulse quickened. "That's restricted for a reason." Rand handed him a thin crystal disc, glowing with an odd blue shimmer. This was buried inside a transmission from Earth's late 21st century. At first, it looked like a fragmented data dump. But when I ran a psycho-emotive translation, Veli hesitated. "You decoded it?" "Only part of it. But it wasn't data. It was feeling. Emotions encoded in symbols and vibration. Ancient raw, like someone poured a soul into a bottle and threw it across time." Veli took the disc. Later that night, in the privacy of his chamber, he connected it to his cognition interface. He braced himself, and then the world fell away. He was no longer in the academy. He was standing in a field soaked with rain. Smoke curled on the horizon. Thunder cracked. In the distance, a city burned. 1,000 voices screamed, not in fear, but in memory. He felt at loss, not the abstract sadness taught in emotional conditioning. This was deeper. It came with faces, with names he didn't know, but felt like family. Then hope, fragile but blazing like a match in the dark. Then love, so powerful it brought him to his knees. Then came the whisper. "We remember you. Do you remember us?" The voice was human, and not. It felt like it came from inside him. He tore the interface away, gasping. His skin trembled. Tears, rare for a Zarati, ran down his cheeks. Something inside him had cracked. Rand was waiting in the corridor. "I saw it," Veli whispered. "They're not just strangers. They're connected to us." Rand nodded. "I ran DNA pattern overlays between modern humans and early Zarati gene maps. The divergence point is too close. Statistically impossible unless we were them," Veli finished. They stared at each other in the silence of that realization. The next day, they met with Tora under the waterfall dome, away from faculty sensors. "You two are delusional," she said at first. "Dream visions? Genetic echoes? That's not science, it's myth." "Then explain the emotional imprint," Rand said. "Explain why watching a primitive species fight and die makes us feel like we're grieving ancestors." Tora hesitated. Instructor Kalen said empathy is dangerous. "This is why. You're entangling yourselves with alien trauma. Or uncovering our own," Veli said. He placed the disc on the stone between them. The blue shimmer pulsed like a heartbeat. "I heard a voice," he said. "It wasn't human. Not entirely. It knew us." Tora touched the disc reluctantly. Her eyes fluttered. She gasped, pulled away. "That's not possible," she whispered. "That should not exist." Rand leaned forward. "What did you see?" "A mirror," she said. "But it wasn't me. It was older, worn, but it had my eyes." The cadets sat in stunned silence. "We were told we evolved from migratory seed stock," Rand said slowly. "That the Zarati came from the edge of a dying world. But we never questioned where that world was." "It was Earth," Veli said. Tora shivered. "Why would our ancestors erase that? Why cut themselves off so completely?" Veli's voice was low. Maybe they were running from something. Not just war, but guilt. Rand leaned back. What if the worst war humans ever fought was the one that created us? Silence fell over them again, not heavy, but pregnant with a truth they weren't ready to carry. But they would carry it anyway, because now they had touched the thread, and it was unraveling everything. A shared past. Veli's hands trembled as he turned the ancient artifact over in his palms. It was small, barely the size of his thumb, but its surface was etched with symbols that pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat buried beneath stone. He had retrieved it from the restricted chamber below the Academy's Hall of Origin, a room few cadets even knew existed. Cora stood beside him, arms crossed, her stance guarded but no longer skeptical. "You're sure this matches Earth iconography?" "Not current human symbols," Veli said, "but old. Pre-collapse. Pre-sundering, even. Look at the spiral here. It's the same pattern carved into the monolith from the deep stream memory vision." Ran, eyes wide, leaned in. "And this indentation? It's a star map. That's Sol, Earth's system. It's real." The revelation had cracked something open in all of them, and they couldn't turn away now. Each day they spent poring over forbidden texts and genetic records, slipping through security layers, breaking rules they once revered. The further they looked back into their own origins, the more they found Earth staring back at them. What disturbed them most wasn't what they discovered. It was how much had been hidden. "There's a pattern," Cora said, projecting a hologram of the Academy's approved genetic tree. She waved her hand, and a forbidden overlay flickered over it, highlighting gaps, entire centuries, even millennia, erased or mislabeled. "They cut the line," Rand whispered. "Our line. They didn't want us to remember," Veli said. He stared at the symbol on the artifact again. It was a flame within a circle, simple, human, a sign of resistance, of survival. "Why?" he asked aloud. "Why go so far to forget?" Cora turned to him, her voice quiet. "Because remembering meant carrying it. The wars, the deaths, the shame. Maybe they thought forgetting was the only way to begin again. And yet," Veli said, "the memory survived. They followed the traces, decoding star maps hidden in ancient Zarati poetry, in lullabies, in old songs no one had sung in 1,000 years. They weren't just stories, they were warnings. Warnings from ancestors who had lived through something too devastating to speak aloud. A phrase kept returning in their research. The Great Sundering. It was never explained, never named directly, only implied in hushed reverence and vague references to the burning of memory and the severing of blood. Veli found it in a broken shard of a children's teaching crystal, encrypted in a story about a skyship that fled a crumbling world to find peace in silence. And then Rand found the sealed file. It was buried in a forgotten archive beneath the genetics wing, triple-locked and classified as Cultural Hazard Tier 6, Sundering Protocol, Exile of the Remnant Kin. They broke every rule they knew to access it. The file wasn't long, just a voice recording and an image. A voice, clear and pained, speaking in a language none of them were taught but somehow understood. "We go, not because we are brave, but because we are broken. We leave our home not to escape others, but to escape ourselves. This will be our punishment and our hope, that we may forget the fury that made us gods of ash." Then the image, a human face, worn and weary, looking straight into the recorder, eyes full of sorrow. Then the screen went dark. They sat in silence for a long time. "Exile," Taurus said. "They weren't pioneers. They were fugitives from their own history. We're the descendants of people who chose to erase their own humanity," Rand murmured. "To survive, they had to forget." Veli couldn't speak at first. His throat ached with the weight of it. All the beauty they'd been taught, the peace, the harmony, the nonviolence, it hadn't come from evolution. It had come from grief. "They called themselves the Remnant," he said finally. "That's what we are. Not alien, not separate, just the other side of the mirror." Cora looked up, her voice almost breaking. "Then Earth isn't just a study subject. It's our origin. And those people, those wars, those are our memories. Our scars. And they're waking up," Veli said, placing the artifact back in the center of the table. "We've seen too much. We feel too much now. Whatever our ancestors buried, we've begun to unearth. Outside, the twin suns were setting, casting long shadows across the crystal towers of the academy. But to Veli, it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a beginning, the echo of memory. The academy halls, once luminous and humming with serene harmonic resonance, felt colder now, as if the building itself sensed the weight of a forgotten truth bleeding back into its crystalline bones. Veli stood before the grand convergence mirror in the Hall of Reflection, where generations of cadets had come to contemplate their purpose. But for the first time in recorded history, it reflected something more than just the present. It shimmered with flickers of memory. Not dreams, not projections, ancestral resonance. He reached out, and the mirror shimmered again. The face that looked back at him was his own, but older, harder. Human. Veli, came Rand's voice behind him. You need to see this. They hurried through the old maintenance corridors, tunnels abandoned long ago when the academy expanded upward, cleaner, purer. The further they went, the more the polished walls gave way to raw stone and forgotten carvings. Cora was already there, at what appeared to be a sealed wall. But lines had begun to glow across its surface, markings like those on the Earth artifact they'd found. It responded to me, she said, breathless. It knew me. Rand stepped forward and laid his palm flat on the wall. The glow pulsed, brighter now, and with a soft sound like exhaled breath, the stone melted inward, revealing a chamber untouched for millennia. They entered slowly. It was a shrine, crude by modern standards, metal, fabric, paper, but deeply human. A dusty journal lay open on a pedestal, its pages preserved in a protective field. Beside it, a weathered flag of Earth, blue, green, and white, torn but proud. Cora whispered, they didn't erase everything. Someone remembered. Veli picked up the journal. The script inside was human, but as with the encoded dream disk, he could read it as if it were his own thoughts. Day 1. We arrived. No welcoming banners, no home. Only stars and silence. I hope, in time, we forget the war. But some part of me prays we don't. Memory is pain, yes, but is also warning. The entry blurred as tears gathered in Veli's eyes. He turned the page. Day 342. The children are different. Softer. They do not cry in the night from dreams of fire. They don't remember the screams. Maybe they will grow into peace. But the writing stopped mid-sentence. A smudge of ink. A smear like a fingerprint. Who were they? Rand asked, voice reverent. Our first ancestors here, Veli said. The remnant. The ones who chose peace, not because they were above violence, but because they knew its cost too well. Cora stepped to the back of the chamber, where an old audio terminal blinked faintly. I think I can restore this, she said. She pressed a sequence of runes. The device crackled. Then a voice filled the room. Raspy, human, female. To those who find this, whether days or eons from now, you're not lost. You're not separate. We are all pieces of the same sorrow, stitched across the stars. We left Earth because we were broken, but do not let our silence become your burden. Remember, not to return, but to understand. There is no peace without truth. The recording ended. They stood there, each with the weight of generations pressing against their hearts. I thought we were chosen, Cora said softly, that we were designed for serenity, raised beyond chaos. But we were just lucky to forget. Veli shook his head. Not lucky, just unfinished. Rand walked slowly around the chamber, studying the remnants of lives once lived with fear, guilt, and hope. What do we do now, he asked. That was the question. With all they had uncovered, secret archives, hidden shrines, ancestral exiles, what now? Veli placed the journal back on the pedestal and stepped into the center of the room. We remember, he said. We teach the truth, even if it breaks everything we've been told, even if the academy silences us. We can't be the generation that chooses silence again. The others looked at him, something fierce and fragile in their eyes. Cora gave a nod. No more forgetting. Rand smiled faintly. Then we better prepare. As they left the chamber, the glowing wall reformed behind them, but not completely. A faint line of light remained, like a scar. Outside, Dawn broke over the horizon. The twin suns rose, casting long beams across the campus. But to Veli, it felt like Earth's sun rising behind him, warm, distant, and finally seen. Something had been unlocked, not just a memory, but a calling. And across the stars, the echo of their forgotten past had finally been heard. When the cadets spoke, the hall of symposium, usually a sanctuary of composed discourse and curated knowledge, buzzed with nervous energy. Hundreds of cadets and faculty members filled the chamber, seated in arcing tiers of gleaming crystal. The air shimmered with anticipation. Veli stood at the center platform, his pulse a war drum in his ears. Beside him stood Tora and Ran, their faces pale but resolute. Behind them, the ancient artifact hovered on a magnetic pedestal, glowing softly like a living ember. This was against every regulation. Unauthorized presentation, violation of cognitive containment laws, illegal access to restricted archives. The consequences would be swift, severe, unless they changed everything. He took a breath. His voice, when it came, was steady. Esteemed instructors, fellow cadets, we've come to speak of memory. Not the kind etched into archives, but the kind etched into us, into our blood, into our silence. There was a ripple of murmurs across the room. Tora stepped forward. For generations, we believed that the Zarati are a people of peace, that we were born in balance, untouched by the chaos of primitive violence, that humanity, our subjects of study, are relics of an unfortunate past. She paused. We now know that belief is false. Ran activated the projection crystal. The room dimmed, and from the artifact rose images, footage from the Dream Vision disc, the voice of the remnant exile, the encoded journal entries. Faces of humans, so similar, so raw in their emotion, danced across the chamber air. Gasps erupted. Some watched with wide eyes. Some turned away. Veli spoke again. These aren't fables. These are memories. Our memories. We are not descendants of some evolved race from another galaxy. We are human, changed by time, by distance, by choice, but human still. Headmistress Kaelin rose from the highest tier. Her presence was like a thundercloud. This information is heretical. Memory splicing from unauthorized sources is dangerous. Emotional contagion is a known risk. Cadets, you are tampering with collective stability. Rand didn't flinch. Then stability is a lie, built on silence. Kaelin's voice sharpened. Do you even know what you're awakening? Wars that scorch skies. Hatred so vast it split the species. Your ancestors chose to forget. They made peace sacred by sacrificing their past. Veli looked up at her, pain in his voice. Then why does that past still echo inside us? Why do we grieve for a people we've never met? Because our souls remember, even when our minds are made to forget. Tora turned to the crowd. We stand here not to condemn our history, but to embrace it. Peace earned through pain is still peace, but it should never come at the cost of truth. Kaelin hesitated. Then she touched her wrist console. The chamber flickered again. Another projection began, but this one was different. A figure appeared, holographic, but more detailed, more personal than anything before. A woman, human in every line of her face. She stood amid stars, her voice as steady as stone. To those who inherit what we could not fix, we did not forget to deceive you. We forgot to give you a chance. If you have found this, then perhaps you are strong enough now to hold the full truth. We loved Earth, but we failed it. We were its last children, and we ran, not in fear of others, but in fear of ourselves. We buried memory, but if you choose to unbury it, then let it become not your shame, but your guide. The figure looked out, directly into the hall. You are our redemption. The hologram vanished. Silence felt like gravity. Kaelin sat back down, not in anger, but in something like surrender. The council didn't speak, not right away. Then, one by one, hands began to rise. First, a cadet from the Psychological Ethics Division, then one from History, then a genetics apprentice. They stood, silent, united. Veli's breath caught. They weren't alone. 2 weeks later, the Academy archives were unsealed. The first official course on human Zerati symbiotic origins was announced. Public debate rippled across the stars. Some denied, some resisted, but many began to feel the resonance, the stirrings of grief and awe, of old fire and new meaning. Veli walked the memory garden beneath a silver sky, now renamed the Garden of Echoes. Children played among ancient stone and new blooms. At the center stood a statue, not of a hero, but of a human child looking up, one hand outstretched, holding a flame. A teacher approached. "Cadet Veli." "Just Veli now," he said, smiling. "You've caused a ripple we may never contain." "I don't want to contain it," Veli said. "I want to listen to it." Above them, in the soft blue light of the stars, Earth turned in silence. Not just a subject of study anymore, but a home remembered,